Surrounded by poverty and hardship, Horace Mann managed to break the system, educate himself, and then make great changes in the future education system. In researching Horace Mann, we can learn about all of the advances to the education system that were made and the steps that he took to make them. The evidence that I plan to provide is supported by the annual report of the Board of Education by the Massachusetts Board of Education. I also used evidence from the Horace Mann School's Education and Accomplishments written by the editors that work for the website Biography. I also used the website PBS Online Only a Teacher, which was written by the Schoolhouse Pioneers. After researching Horace Mann from these websites, I have a very good understanding of him and the movements he had in the education system. Despite all of the adversity, Horace Mann used his political power to make great advances in the education system as a whole. I plan to cover Horace Mann's beliefs in regards to education and what he thought needed to be changed, such as that education should be free and universal. Along with that, it should be reliant on well-trained professionals. Now, when discussing Horace Mann, we must first discuss his first position on the Massachusetts Board of Education in 1837 and what he accomplished from being appointed to this position. I first plan to discuss how in 1837 Horace Mann was elected to the Massachusetts Board of Education, and he used this to enact many major educational reforms, such as that schools should be free and available to everyone. According to PBS Online Only a Teacher Schoolhouse Pioneers, Mann spearheaded the common school movement, ensuring that every child could receive a basic education funded by local taxes. This meaning that the education would be free to the people, which would ensure that all children and people would be able to get a good education. This also being something Mann did not have growing up as a child. Horace Mann did not only influence the development of free education in the schools in Massachusetts. His ideas and movements soon spread throughout the country. Since Mann was not given a good education growing up, he was for every child being given a fair shot at an education, and that the people should be required to support the school systems. As stated in the annual report of the Board of Education, published by the Massachusetts Board of Education, he is taxed to support schools because they are the most effective means of developing and training those powers and faculties in a child. In other words, the people should have to pay taxes for schools because the children need to be developed for the future after us. Along with free education, Horace Mann also believed a key to getting a good education was having the proper educators. The next point that I will be discussing is that Horace Mann believed in having the proper people educating the students and was very passionate about it due to the fact that throughout his life growing up, majority of the time he was left to teach himself the material and did not have the opportunity nor the chance to be properly educated by teachers. This led him to develop some of the first steps into making sure teachers were properly trained to teach students. State-sponsored training schools had been introduced in previous years, but according to PBS Online Only a Teacher Schoolhouse Pioneers, Mann was the first person to actually establish the first normal school in hopes of developing the educators to the best of their abilities in teaching the students. The article states that Mann knew that the quality of rural schools had to be raised and that teaching was the key to that improvement. Mann, having first-hand experiences with the poor rural education, ensured that he wanted to make a change, and he wanted to make it now. According to Horace Mann School's Education and Accomplishments biography, The teachers were trained to have to follow man's guidelines. These guidelines included man's ideas of teaching and the way he believed students should be taught to get the best education possible. Then, the first of several Massachusetts state-sponsored schools, normal schools, was established in Lexington in 1839. By the end of Horace Mann's life, he changed the way the education system operated completely. Throughout his life, Horace Mann used his power to advance and change the education system as a whole. The life of Horace Mann represents a man that dedicated his life to improving and developing something that he did not have, an education. Mann, despite having little to none taught education, beat the odds and grew up to be one of the greatest influencers in the education system.